Look at this moment. Not the trophy. Not the celebration. Look at the player almost everyone ignored. While the cameras followed Lamine Yamal, while the headlines belonged to Rodri, everyone was waiting for Kylian Mbappé to steal the final. But one man quietly destroyed every attack before it even began. Marc Cucurella. The same player Chelsea fans once called a flop. The same defender rivals laughed at. The same signing many believed would never justify his price tag. And somehow, just months later, he stood on football's biggest stage, as the best left back in the world. Because this isn't the story of how Marc Cucurella won the World Cup. It's the story of how the football world was forced to admit it was wrong. The summer of 2026 wasn't supposed to belong to Marc Cucurella. Spain arrived in North America carrying enormous expectations. They were already European champions. They possessed arguably the most exciting young generation in world football. Lamine Yamal, Pedri, Rodri, Pau Cubarsí. Every conversation revolved around Spain's incredible midfield, or their dazzling attack. Very few people mentioned the left back. He wasn't expected to dominate headlines. He was expected to do the dirty work. And that suited him perfectly. Because football has always underestimated players willing to sacrifice themselves for everyone else. Spain's tournament didn't begin with fireworks. It began with doubt. A frustrating draw against World Cup newcomers Cape Verde immediately raised uncomfortable questions. Had Spain become too predictable? Were they relying too heavily on individual brilliance? Could they actually defend their status as Europe's best team? For 90 minutes, nothing seemed to work. Spain controlled possession, created chance after chance, but the breakthrough never came. The criticism started almost immediately. Maybe this generation wasn't as unstoppable as everyone believed. But inside Spain's dressing room, nobody panicked. Especially not Marc Cucurella. Because experienced players understand something young teams often don't. One disappointing result doesn't decide a World Cup. Your reaction does. As the tournament progressed, Spain became calmer, sharper, far more ruthless. Every knockout round looked slightly more convincing than the previous one. And while the goals made the highlights, something else was happening underneath. Marc Cucurella was becoming impossible to play against. Every winger who faced him experienced the same nightmare. Receive the ball, turn, and before the next touch, Cucurella was already there. Not diving into reckless tackles. Not relying on unbelievable pace. Simply reading the game 1 second before everyone else. Closing passing lanes. Winning second balls. Forcing mistakes. Making elite attackers question every decision. The statistics barely captured it. The eye test did. Then came Austria. The first night the entire football world finally noticed what Spain already knew. Cucurella wasn't just defending brilliantly. He was becoming one of Spain's most important attacking weapons. Every overlapping run carried purpose. Every cross asked difficult questions. Every movement stretched defensive lines until they finally broke. Suddenly, the player everyone had ignored was quietly becoming one of Spain's biggest advantages. And yet, that performance would soon be forgotten. Because waiting around the corner was a challenge that could define his entire career. France. Kylian Mbappé. And 90 minutes. That would completely change how the football world viewed Marc Cucurella forever. France weren't just Spain's next opponent. They were the team almost everyone expected to win the World Cup. Kylian Mbappé was in terrifying form. Michael Ollis had become one of the tournament's biggest creators. Every attack looked effortless. Every transition looked deadly. Pundits spent days discussing how Spain would stop Mbappé. Almost nobody asked a different question. Who was going to stop Marc Cucurella? Because while the cameras focused on France's superstars, Cucurella had already started studying every movement they made. Every run. Every passing lane. Every space they loved to attack. He wasn't preparing for a duel. He was preparing for a war. The first few minutes told the entire story. Ollis received the ball. Cucurella was already there. Mbappé tried drifting wider. Cucurella followed. France switched the play. Cucurella had already recovered. Again. And again. And again. It wasn't spectacular. It was exhausting. Exactly the kind of football elite attackers hate. Because great forwards don't only need space. They need rhythm. Cucurella refused to give them either. Early in the match, he picked up a yellow card. For most defenders, that changes everything. You become cautious. You stop committing. You give attackers an extra yard. Cucurella did the opposite. He became even smarter. Instead of diving into tackles, he controlled distances. Instead of chasing the ball, he predicted where it would arrive next. France kept searching for openings. Spain kept closing every door. And slowly, something remarkable happened. The favorites began looking frustrated. Every failed attack increased the pressure. Every misplaced pass added more doubt. For the first time all tournament, France looked ordinary. Late in the game, Mbappé finally saw what looked like his moment. One touch. One burst of acceleration. Exactly the situation he usually wins. Cucurella didn't panic. He waited. Matched the run perfectly. Then produced one clean tackle that echoed around the stadium like a goal. Spain's bench exploded. His teammates celebrated. Because everyone understood what that challenge meant. It wasn't just stopping Mbappé. It was protecting Spain's place in the World Cup final. Sometimes, one tackle changes an entire tournament. That was one of them. But shutting down France would turn out to be the easier job. Because waiting in the final was the player who had defined an entire generation. Lionel Messi. And with him, a chance for Marc Cucurella to complete the greatest tournament of his career. The World Cup final doesn't forgive mistakes. One lapse. One bad touch. 1 second of hesitation. That's all it takes. And standing between Spain and football immortality was Lionel Messi's Argentina. The reigning world champions. A team built on experience, belief, and the certainty that they always found a way. Nobody expected an easy night. Least of all Marc Cucurella. Because even if Messi no longer sprinted past defenders the way he once did, he still only needed one moment. One pass. One opening. One mistake. Spain couldn't afford to give him any of them. From the opening whistle, Cucurella played with remarkable discipline. He didn't chase the ball. He controlled space. Whenever Argentina tried building down Spain's left, they immediately found him waiting. Every loose ball. Every second ball. Every recovery. Somehow, the same player always appeared first. It wasn't luck. It was preparation. Hours of studying opponents. Hours of repeating the same defensive movements until they became instinct. That's what separates elite defenders from good ones. They don't react. They anticipate. But this wasn't one of those finals full of beautiful attacking football. It became a battle. Argentina defended deep. Spain dominated possession. Every chance felt priceless. Every clearance sounded like relief. As the clock kept ticking, the pressure became unbearable. Then extra time arrived. Exactly where World Cups create legends. Even after more than 100 minutes, Cucurella was still running. Still pressing. Still overlapping whenever Spain needed width. Most defenders survive extra time. He attacked it. One powerful run into the penalty area nearly produced the breakthrough. Moments later, he tried his luck from distance. The goal never came. But the message was clear. Spain refused to stop believing. Eventually, their persistence was rewarded. The breakthrough finally arrived. The stadium erupted. Argentina had no answer. Spain were champions of the world. As teammates collapsed to the grass, one statistic quietly summed up Marc Cucurella's tournament. He had played every minute, every match. Not once substituted. Not once hidden. 7 clean sheets. A World Cup winner's medal. And suddenly, the football world saw something Chelsea supporters had only recently started understanding. This wasn't the same player they had laughed at years earlier. This was one of the most complete defenders anywhere in football. But becoming a world champion didn't erase the past. Because to understand why that medal meant so much, you have to go back. To the darkest period of his career. Back to Chelsea. Back to the moment almost everyone had already decided. Marc Cucurella would never make it. It's easy to celebrate greatness. It's much harder to remember what came before it. Because long before Marc Cucurella became a world champion, he became a punchline. when Chelsea paid around £63 million to sign him in 2022. The expectations were enormous. The criticism arrived even faster. Every mistake became a headline. Every misplaced pass became another reason to question the transfer. Chelsea were changing managers, changing systems, changing direction almost every few months. Nothing felt stable. And in unstable teams, expensive players usually become the easiest targets. Cucurella was exactly that. Some supporters called him one of Chelsea's worst signings. Others claimed he'd never justify the price tag. At one point, he was even sarcastically applauded as he walked off the pitch during a disappointing defeat. For many players, that moment would have broken their confidence. Instead, it became fuel. Because while everyone else focused on proving people wrong with words, Cucurella chose something much more powerful. He stayed silent. He kept working. And slowly, without anybody really noticing, the defender everyone had written off started becoming the player Chelsea could no longer imagine playing without. Everything changed the moment Enzo Maresca arrived. Most people expected Chelsea's attack to improve. Very few expected Marc Cucurella to become one of the most important players in the entire system. Because Maresca didn't see him as an ordinary left-back. He saw him as a weapon. Out of possession, Cucurella defended the touchline like every traditional fullback. But the moment Chelsea recovered the ball, everything changed. He drifted into midfield, created overloads, pressed high, then suddenly appeared inside the penalty area like an attacking midfielder. Opponents couldn't predict where he would be next. And that's exactly what made him so dangerous. He wasn't the quickest player on the pitch. He wasn't the strongest. But his timing, his positioning, and his endless energy made him almost impossible to escape. Every loose ball looked like it belonged to him. Every 50-50 challenge somehow ended the same way, with Cucurella walking away in possession. For the first time since arriving in London, people stopped talking about his transfer fee. They started talking about his football. And once that happened, the confidence returned. The aggression returned. The belief returned. The player Chelsea thought they had signed finally arrived. Then came the nights that completely changed his reputation. Not against struggling teams. Against the very best. First, Barcelona. The club where his football journey had begun. The place that had once decided he wasn't part of their future. Now, under the brightest lights in Europe, Marc Cucurella stood directly opposite the player everyone called football's next global superstar. Lamine Yamal. 490 relentless minutes. He gave the teenager almost nothing. Every time Yamal tried to isolate him, Cucurella matched him. Every dribble was delayed. Every passing lane disappeared. Every attack became more frustrating than the last. Chelsea won convincingly. But the result wasn't the biggest headline. The biggest headline was that Barcelona's most dangerous player had been completely neutralized. And then, he did it again. This time against Mohamed Salah. Liverpool's entire attack normally flows through the Egyptian. Most defenders spend 90 minutes trying to survive him. Cucurella turned the battle upside down. Instead of simply defending Salah, he exploited the space Salah left behind. Late in the game, he burst into that empty channel, delivered a perfectly weighted low cross, and Chelsea scored the winner. That's when everyone realized something. Marc Cucurella wasn't just stopping elite attackers anymore. He was using them to beat their own teams. By then, the jokes had disappeared. The criticism had disappeared. Even the transfer fee had disappeared from the conversation. Because nobody was asking whether Chelsea had overpaid anymore. They were asking something completely different. How do you replace a player like this? The answer: you don't. Chelsea knew it. Which is exactly why they had no intention of selling him. Reports linked Cristiano Ronaldo's Al Nassr with a huge offer. Other European clubs made inquiries. Chelsea's response never changed. Marc Cucurella wasn't available. Not at any price. That decision lasted until Real Madrid called. And Real Madrid weren't searching for another glamorous signing. They were searching for certainty. After another disappointing season, the club needed balance, discipline, leadership. Most importantly, They needed someone capable of protecting the left side behind Vinicius Jr. and Kylian Mbappé. Jose Mourinho already knew exactly who that player was. Not because Cucurella scored spectacular goals. Not because he sold shirts. But because Mourinho has always trusted footballers willing to suffer for the team. Players who treat defending like an obsession. Players who never stop competing. Marc Cucurella fit that description perfectly. And once Mourinho made his decision, everything moved incredibly quickly. Real Madrid didn't sign Marc Cucurella because he was fashionable. They signed him because he had already survived everything football could throw at him. Pressure, criticism, failure, expectation. And somehow, he came out stronger every single time. At the Bernabeu, Mourinho immediately built his defensive structure around him. The mission was simple. Let Vinicius attack. Let Mbappé attack. Cucurella would take care of everything behind them. The ugly tackles. The recovery runs. The 1-versus-1 battles. The sacrifices nobody celebrates. Until they disappear. And that's why this story matters. Because football loves players who score the goals. History remembers the players who make those goals possible. Marc Cucurella never became the fastest defender. He never became the strongest. He never became the most glamorous. He became something far more valuable. A footballer every elite manager wants. And every elite winger secretly hates facing. From an overpriced flop to a European champion. From a Chelsea outcast to a World Cup winner. From being laughed at to becoming the man trusted by Real Madrid and Jose Mourinho. Sometimes, the greatest comeback stories aren't written by the loudest stars. Sometimes, they're written by the player who simply refused to stop fighting.